This is rare videotape that was captured by White House staff members. It shows what happened after the president and his team left the Situation Room.
Good job, National Security Team.
That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm proud of it. You guys did a great job.
Relief and congratulations were brief because there was another round of work to be done. Revealing the secret had to be handled carefully. What's it like to call Pakistan and say, we just flew 50 guys into your country, out of your country, we're out of your airspace. We took out bin Laden, who was living in your midst?
We were concerned about this from the start. What made it easier from my perspective was they were on notice. Since 2007, when I was campaigning for this office, I had said that if we get bin Laden in our sights, we're going to go after him. I had repeated that to Pakistanis face to face.
A process begins where you have to start calling presidents, domestic, foreign, committee chairs, cabinet members, all the people you wouldn't want to read about it in the paper the next day.
We began to do exactly as you described, create the list, who was going to call who. Obviously, the president called former presidents, asked me where to find my husband.
Really?
Because, Bill didn't know anything. I hadn't talked to anybody about it. So the first he heard was when President Obama called him.
You place a call to George W. Bush, 43, on whose watch the attack happened, and what was that like?
Well, I think that it was an important symbol of who we are as a people. We get into these partisan fights, administrations come and go, but there's a certain continuity about who we are and what we care about and what our values are.
At roughly the same time, and as we learn here for the first time, Admiral Mullen had to call his Pakistani military counterpart about those pieces left from the crashed stealth helicopter and how important that wreckage was to the United States. How much did you worry that it was going to end up in the wrong hands?
Well, a great deal. I called General Kiani in Pakistan. I felt obligated to let him know what had happened. And then part of that conversation was about the helicopter, and I said, we need that back.
A friend of mine in the military said, 48 hours after that explosion, we expected pieces of that tail to be arriving in China for their full inspection.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that.
I figured you wouldn't.
Yeah.
For the president, who hadn't been able to breathe a word of any of this to his own family, near the end of the day, he gets a chance to check in with his wife and daughters. And the First Lady? She's at dinner?
She's at dinner, and I let her know, that I'm probably going to miss dinner because I've got a few other things going on tonight. It turns out we had a fairly important thing to announce.
And then it came time to explain it to two young daughters.
Yeah. Malia and Sasha, I think, were too young to fully absorb 9/11. On the other hand, they've grown like all our children have grown up in the shadow of 9/11 and terrorism and understood who Osama bin Laden was.
The reason I'm calling is to tell you we killed.
Deep inside the White House, even as the calls were going out and a speech was being finalized, something unexpected started to erupt within earshot just outside the White House gates.
As we are walking out on my way to make the formal announcement, people had already begun to gather because the news had started trickling out spontaneously. And at first I didn't understand what's that noise going on.
We could hear this roar. We had no idea what it was. And then all of a sudden we were able to decipher USA, USA. It was just an astonishing moment.
And somebody says, well, throngs of people have started to gather outside the fence, and they're waving American flags and they're cheering. And that, I think, again, was a reminder of what this meant to the country and how important it would be.
It is obvious the White House wants to call attention on this crowning achievement militarily. How will you know if it's turning to politics?
I do worry a great deal that this time of year that somehow this gets spun into election politics. I can assure you that those individuals who risk their lives, the last thing in the world that they'd want is to be spun into that. So I'm hoping that that doesn't happen.
You got him, but what did it get you? What did it get us? Are we demonstrably safer? We've had setbacks vis-a-vis our military with desecration, with the burning of the Quran, unforced errors. What's the net effect and result now that you have a year's clarity behind you?
Even before we got bin Laden, we had al-Qaeda on its heels. And by getting bin Laden, we capped off that 2-year campaign. That was important. That makes us safer. Did it completely diminish all risk of terrorism? Absolutely not. But all told, a year later, are we better off? Are we safer because we got bin Laden? Absolutely.
And I also think it sent a message, Brian, to the whole world. You attack Americans, innocent Americans, we will follow you to the gates of hell. And I think it sends an incredibly strong message about our capacity and about our will.
Of all the things you've witnessed in your official life, where does this day rank?
It was both a professional responsibility that I had as Secretary of State, and it was personally so important to me. You know, I was, at ground zero the next day, and I mean, I will never forget what it was like flying over that and watching those burning hulks and knowing all the bodies that were buried there. So it is probably the most impactful combination of personal and professional responsibility that I've ever had.
Back home, days later, the president got to meet the SEALs who had conducted themselves so brilliantly and with characteristic modesty, including the veteran pilot whose expertly controlled crash landing prevented disaster and saved all the SEALs on board his helicopter.
I will tell you, when I saw that pilot, I gave him a pretty good hug.
What was it like for you to get to know them and to see them?
Yeah, great guys. They presented me with the flag that had gone on that mission, signed by all of them on the back. And I think it's fair to say that will probably be the most important possession that I leave with from this presidency.
Most important day of your presidency?
Most important single day of my presidency. The most intense, concentrated day that I've had as President of the United States.
One more note before we leave you. In compiling this story, everyone we spoke to, from the President of the United States on down, mentioned repeatedly the most important component of all this, of course, and that would be the special operators. The people at the other end of the line, at the other end of the orders, who carry out the orders, and we will likely never know their identities. That's the way they operate. For all of us who put this broadcast together, thank you for being with us from the White House Situation Room.